go back to the 6th chapter of the 4th seal, the Roman Empire at that time was divided into 4 parts. Verse 8 says, I looked and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. And Rome at the time of the 4th seal was divided into 4 parts. And the 4 rulers over the 4 parts were Diocletian, Maximin, Galerius, and Constantius. And they represented the 4 parts of the Roman Empire at that time. Now, from the 1st of May, 305 AD, as Gibbon describes, Licinius took over some of the power which had existed under the previous rulers. So from 305, with a series of battles, the 4 parts of the Roman Empire became 3. And the 3 answered to this. Constantine took over from Constantinius and ruled in Rome over the west of the empire. Licinius ruled in Illyricum, and Maximin ruled in the east. All these are in Gibbon if you want to read them. So we've got these 3 parts which came out of the 4 of the 4th seal. And that's why in verse 4 of chapter 12 we've only got a 3rd part mentioned, not a 4th part. Because after 305 there was only 3 parts to the Roman Empire: Constantine, Licinius, and Maximin. Now, one of the incredible facts was that 2 of these rulers, Constantine and Licinius, were linked together by one common bond. Not because they liked each other, not because they were related to each other, because they both tolerated the Christians. Maximin, who ruled in the east of the empire, hated the Christians and supported the pagans. And therefore his desire was to obviously overturn the other 2 co-rulers in order to re-establish paganism throughout the empire. And we've got Maximin, a 3rd part in the east, who did. Now he caused all sorts of problems within the empire until eventually there was a great battle between Maximin and Licinius. And those 2 clashed. Not just in one battle, but a series. But there were some almighty battles which went on between these 2. Now, it was generally assumed, according to Gibbon, that Maximin would defeat Licinius, but it didn't happen. Licinius was victorious. So the 3 rulers of Rome became 2. Licinius had taken over now the territory of Maximin, whilst Constantine still ruled in Rome and the west. Now again, one would have thought that would be very harmonious to the Christians of the empire. But sadly, it wasn't. Because soon as he took over the territory of Maximin, Licinius changed his stance. And from being a supporter of the Christian cause, he now became a hater of it, and became a worse tyrant to the Christians than Maximin had ever done before. And so we've got these 2 rulers of the Roman Empire, one being supported by the pagans, the other being supported by the Christians, and these 2 were now ready to do battle. And so verse 4 says, his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. This was the power of the great red dragon, and it answers to Maximin, who of course was supported by the dragon power, the pagan power, and he caused 1/3 of the part of the stars of heaven, the rulers of the empire, to be cast to the earth. But he was then overtaken by Licinius. And Licinius now was represented by the dragon, which stood before the woman, which represents that which was about to bring forth Constantine, who was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So what we have got in verse 4 is the situation where the Christians were supporting the power which was Constantine, whereas the pagans, the dragon, was supporting the power which was Licinius. And these 2 were now going to be locked into battle for the ultimate sovereignty of the Roman Empire. And that's why we've got this way in verse 4, where the dragon was ready to devour the child as soon as it was born. Gibbon, if you like reading him, gives a graphic account of the way, by these series of battles, the 4 parts of the empire became 3, and the 3 became 2, until you got these 2 great champions, Constantine on the one hand and Licinius on the other. And it really is quite incredible how, with obviously no recourse to the scriptures, Gibbon gives us the description of these 2, which fits so perfectly with this 12th chapter.